Hi everyone, I'm Mike from Lanzarote Information and welcome to another edition of the Lanzarote News and Weather. Now, for those of you who are new to the channel, I'll just let you know what the format is. I'll be telling you all about the weather on your favourite island. I'll be bringing you up to date with all the news, everything that's happened here over the last week. I'll be giving you 3 things you could be doing on the island if you're here next week, and that comes right at the end. And somewhere in the middle, I'll be sharing with you a useful Spanish phrase that you can add to your vocabulary. So let's start off with the weather. Really, it has not been a great winter here in Lanzarote. The shame of it is last weekend was epic, and unfortunately we were working all through the weekend, so we didn't get to see much of it, but in the odd breaks when we got out of the office, it was glorious sitting in the sunshine, 27 degrees, light winds, and I thought, we're back, Lanzarote's weather is back. But it all went horribly wrong on Wednesday when it became unusually cool. And I'm talking about 14 or 15 degrees when we came out first thing in the morning. And that's pretty cold for April in Lanzarote. I know it's all relative, but it felt very cold to us. And then we had news that yet another Atlantic storm would be passing by the islands. And sure enough, on Thursday, Storm Nuria showed up. The storm passed well to the west of the islands, but it brought the strongest winds to the island of La Palma, where they had 100 kilometers an hour. And we had friends who were over there for a short break, and fortunately they weren't. They didn't get into any trouble with the winds. But we did have winds on this island that were quite scary, up to 90 kilometers an hour in Tahiti, where some other friends sent us a photo of a roof that had been ripped off the house. A floodlight tower, a tall floodlight tower from a football ground in Argana Alta came down. Lots of palms are down. There's leaf debris everywhere on the island. Here in Aria, it wasn't too bad. I think the highest gust was about 70 kilometers an hour. But it was one of those sort of situations where you're sitting in the office, where I'm sitting in the office, and you can hear a gust building and you kind of clench everything and hope that you don't hear a crashing noise as a palm comes down or a claraboya, a skylight gets ripped off the roof by the wind. But touch wood, we made it successfully, and everything's died back down to, I wouldn't say normal yet. There are still more clouds than we usually expect at this time of year, but much, much better. Now, the first piece of news, those of you who visit Puerto Calero regularly will know that there is a supermarket that has been in construction there for, I guess, around 18 months. It's right next door to the Costa Calero Hotel. That supermarket has now opened. It opened on Friday the 4th. It's called Superdino. We haven't seen it yet, but I'll go down and check it out and I will let you know what it's like. Next up, we have the date for Noche Blanca in Teguise, in La Villa de Teguise this year. And it will take place on Friday, the 27th of June. Noche Blanca, or White Night, is quite a common kind of music, dance, food festival that takes place in various parts of Spain and South America each year. It's just a brilliant night out. Starts sort of early evening, goes on until the early hours of the following morning. A lot of people choose to wear white for it, so the pictures, the images that you can get of White Night going on in Costa Teguise tend to be very dramatic and interesting. We don't have the full program for it yet, but we will post it to the website the moment it comes out. Just do a search on Lanzarote Information for Noche Blanca. Good news for the airport this week. Another 45 immigration agents, Policia Nacional agents, are being recruited, which will double the number at the airport. I don't know how long. The information didn't tell us how long it will be before they're actually employed. But it certainly, we need to have more police there on the immigration service to speed up the flow of people coming in from outside the European Union. So hopefully that will happen relatively quickly. Now, of course, the big international news has been the Trump tariffs, or the United States tariffs against pretty much the whole world, including uninhabited islands in the middle of nowhere. You might ask yourself how the Trump tariffs will affect Lanzarote. We don't have a huge amount of trade with the United States, but it is valued at 33.6 million euros per year. And what do we export there? Well, there's a lot of machinery in with that. So I'm guessing it's things that are being made in Gran Canaria, where they do some quite specialist oil equipment. There is a little bit of wine. Bodegas Los Bermejos export about 20% of their wine production to the United States, mainly to New York because they love it there. There's some fruit, there's some vegetables, and a lot of perfume oils apparently from plants grown on different islands. So it's about 33 million. It's not a significantly huge amount, but it will affect, these tariffs, I guess, will affect the island's economy in the longer term if they continue as they're supposed to at 20%. Now let's give you your useful Spanish phrase of the week. And it's one of those where you're wandering around a shop or you're on a market stall and you want to know how much something costs. So how do you ask for it? Well, it's actually relatively easy. It's ¿cuánto cuesta? ¿Cuánto cuesta? And if there are a number of items, perhaps, you're looking at a set which includes earrings and a necklace, then it just becomes the plural of that, ¿cuánto cuestan? ¿Cuánto cuestan? So that's how much do they cost as opposed to how much does it cost. So it's a short and sweet one, but one that you will find you will use all the time as you're travelling around the island, visiting shops and markets and, I don't know, entering the cinema, for example. You might say 2 tickets for the film tonight, ¿cuánto cuestan? Now, before we move on with the news, I just wanted to ask you a quick question. What 3 words would you use to describe Lanzarote? Now, I know it might sound like a weird question, but I've been writing a series of presentations to give to cruise passengers about different ports throughout Spain. And I came up with this idea of introducing each of the ports. They are Valencia, Barcelona, Palma de Mallorca, Santa Cruz de Tenerife, for example. I came up with this idea of starting each of those presentations off with 3 words that I feel describe the vibe of the place we're visiting. So I'd be really interested to know what 3 words you would use to describe your Lanzarote. So just stick them in comments below and I'll gather the information together and create something. It might be a video, it might be a document to share with you in this community on YouTube. And on with the news now. 2 stories about holiday letting here on the island. The first is that another 13 homes on the market have been withdrawn from the market because, and I quote, they don't comply with the regulations. Unfortunately, the press release that came out wasn't specific about what they weren't doing that they should have been doing, and I will try and find out. What that means is that so far this year, 133 holiday letting homes have been withdrawn from the market by the inspectors who are going around and checking that they're complying with all the rules and regs. But also when it comes to holiday letting, a new law or an interpretation of a law has been confirmed this week. And it's to do with the law of, it's called horizontal separation here. It's a bit of a vague term. But the bottom line is, what it means is that if you are an owner in a community of apartments and you want to holiday let your property and apply for a license to do so, you need to get a 3/5 majority of the other owners to say that you can do so. So basically, any new letting licenses agreed for apartments and villas in complexes, in communities, will require 3/5 of the community to agree that holiday letting can take place on that particular property. Now, that does not affect properties that already have a letting license. So if you have a Vivienda Vacacional and you're in a community, you're safe and secure, you can continue doing what you're doing. But this applies to new licenses going forward from now. Now, if you watch this bulletin regularly, you will know that we've had some major issues with water shortages on the island. They've been going on for almost 2 years now, since the plant called Lanzarote 3, which is one of the desalination plants in Arrecife, basically crashed and burned. Well, it didn't literally burn, but it isn't working. Ever since then, the other parts of that plant have been working as hard as they can. The other desalination plants on the island are working as hard as they can as well, but they're just not able to cope with the supply, with the demand, I should say. The result of that is that most places outside the resort areas have been suffering water cuts for the last 2 years. Here in Aria, my guess is that we only get mains water perhaps 4 days a week. It isn't a major issue because we all have water storage devices, aljibes or water tanks, where we keep a supply so that when the mains runs out, our system switches to a water pump system. But it is a bit of a pain, particularly if you've got hoses in the garden as we have, which are directly connected to the mains. I will go and turn them on to water the garden, and there isn't any water to do so, or even to wash the car. President Oswaldo Betancourt announced this week a raft of measures that will be taking place over the next couple of years. The total cost is around 20 million euros, but they include new membranes for some of the existing desalination plants. Those are the osmosis membranes, as well as a complete restoration of the plant number 3, that is the one that originally broke down, and also the consideration to create a whole new section within that main Arrecife desalination plant. In the short term, and by that I mean sometime this year, the water supply should increase by about 10%. Probably not enough, but hopefully the rest will come in 2026 as these things come on stream. One of the biggest issues we've got here is that the water supply system is old. The pipes are old and they're very leaky. It has been said we lose up to 40% of our water through leaky pipes. So there's also a big program running alongside that to install new pipework throughout the island. And hopefully this will become one of those stories in the future where we go, remember those days when we never had water when we turned the taps on? Now, also in news, the Spanish government has announced that the Spanish ID card will be going digital. Now, the Spanish ID card is called the DNI. And at the moment, we are all required to carry our ID cards around with us, or at least to carry some sort of photo ID with us at all times. You use your ID card for pretty much everything here, to get on a flight to Madrid, to prove your identity wherever you go on the island. When you're stopped by the police, you need to show them ID. The good news is this new system will allow your ID card to effectively be carried on your mobile phone using an app called MiDNI, so MiDNI, which you can download, and you'll verify your ID card within that. Then when you're asked to prove your ID, your phone will produce a one-time QR code which will confirm you are who you say you are, and the police or anybody else who needs to know your identity will be able to scan that QR code, and the code will then disappear after it's been used once. So keeping your data secure from other passers-by and stuff like that. The big benefit of this is that you'll no longer need to have to carry a physical card with you at all times. And there was a horrific story this week where a whole group of cyclists were really shamed in a video that went viral on social media. And this took place on the road at Los Hervideros, which is the road to El Golfo from the kind of Yaiza side, that has been closed for a couple of years due to the road collapsing, basically, thanks to sea erosion. And this video showed a big group of cyclists, and they were proper road cyclists with all the lycra on and so on, moving the barriers and just taking their bikes through and carrying on a road which is obviously closed and has a lot of signage on it to say that the road is closed. A lot of people on social media were commenting that it just shows a complete disrespect for the rules of the island. I don't know their nationality. I don't even know if they were tourists, but I presume they were. It's just a bit of a sad story and another example where people seem to think that the rules don't apply to them. Also in Playa Blanca, a tourist found what he thought was a hand grenade and contacted the police while he was out on a walk in the area of Playa Blanca, somewhere by Montaña Roja, I gather. The police came along and found it, and I've seen pictures of it. It really does look like a real grenade. In fact, it turned out to be an airsoft grenade, so one used in airsoft games. And the police decided to blow it up. I don't know why, because it obviously wasn't dangerous, but maybe that seemed like the fun thing to do. Now, a couple of years ago, geothermal generators were put into Timanfaya, into the Montañas del Fuego installation. And this was an experiment. 3 of them were put in, and they're the size of a medium-sized shrub, I guess. And they have a pole that goes down underground and it uses the heat below the surface to generate electricity. Very, very clever design, which has now been patented. And over the last 2 years, they've been running tests to see how effective they are. And they've been really, really successful. They've had no issues with them at all. And they're providing enough power to power 7 or 8 houses. So the people behind it, the researchers behind it, having patented them, are now looking at ways to use geothermal electricity generation more on this island. But more importantly, they're considering creating a manufacturing centre somewhere in the Canaries, hopefully in Lanzarote, to make these things and export them around the world to other places that have a high thermal difference between the surface and just below the surface, so that they can have them as well. There was a lovely story this week when 2 dolphins entered the harbour in Puerto del Carmen and spent several hours swimming up and down the harbour, and it enchanted the both locals and tourists who were in the area. Lots of pictures of them went onto social media. We do have dolphins around the island all the time, but it's quite rare for them to venture into harbour areas and marinas. So this was just lovely to see, and I really enjoyed watching people's videos on Facebook. And finally in the news, the underpass, the new underpass in Playa Honda, will be open this month. In fact, it's almost finished. I suspect it will be open within the next 10 days or so. This underpass will really change the whole traffic dynamic in Playa Honda. Apparently it's going to relieve about 10,000 vehicles a day from that roundabout by the entrance to where the Lidl and the Mercadona supermarkets are. But it will also provide safe pedestrian access. There's a lovely walkway through it with gardens that's available to pedestrians who want to get from one side of Playa Honda to the other. There's also a cycleway that goes through it. We'll get video as soon as it's actually opened and up and running. But that should really change the whole feel of the area of Playa Honda and successfully join the 2 halves of that town, which had been split by decades by the main dual carriageway that runs through the middle of it. I said "and finally" on that last clip, but actually there's one more. The Cabildo have given a presentation at Secrets Hotel in Puerto Calero, at which they're talking about the strategy for attracting more customers from the United States, specifically the eastern coast of the United States. They were joined by the Minister of Tourism from Tour España in New York, and I quote, they said the US market represents a great opportunity for Lanzarote. We're committed to sustainable and quality tourism aligned with the identity of our island. Now you might be asking, and I did as well, why are we looking at new markets when we have too much tourism in Lanzarote already? Because we do. We are oversaturated in terms of tourism. And the answer is that I believe, and this is my opinion, the island really needs to diversify its tourism. At the moment, almost 50% of all our visitors come from one destination, from one country, the United Kingdom. And that's a dangerous position to be in, and it's the highest percentage of any one country of any resort area in all of Spain. It's dangerous because if something changes for that market, it leaves us exposed. If the United Kingdom, the people of the United Kingdom, fall out of love with Lanzarote in the same way that the German market did 20, 25, 30 years ago, it could cause a major problem. If the United Kingdom goes into recession, and I'm not suggesting it will, but if it goes into recession, people have less money to spend on holidays, it could have a major impact on the income of Lanzarote. So the Cabildo are looking, and I think quite rightly, for ways to diversify. It's not about stopping one group coming, but it's about adding more groups that spread the load and spread the risk of any one of them dropping out in the future. So let's move to talking about the 3 things you could be doing if you're on the island over the next 7 days or so. And the first of those is on Saturday the 5th, for most of you watching this today. And this is taking place in Playa Blanca at the El Pueblo shopping centre at Los Colorados. And it's called the Tapas Spring Party, and it runs from 6 p.m. until 10 p.m. And they're going to have inflatables and crepes and games and crafts and jewellery stalls. And they're also going to have tapas from €2 a pop. They're going to have cañas from $1.50. Caña is a small beer. And mojitos from €3. It just sounds like it's got the makings of a really fun evening. And you can access El Pueblo, if you're not staying in that area, via the promenade. Just keep walking along the promenade from the marina towards Papagayo. And basically, when you get to the end of the promenade, you can hang a left and you'll arrive at the El Pueblo shopping centre. And next up, and this is the following day, Sunday the 6th, I would suggest you go along to the Sara Spring Sale. Now, Sara, for those of you who don't know, is the animal charity, the animal protectora on the island, as they're called. And they look after stray cats and dogs. And they're always looking to raise money. And every year they have a spring sale where they have lots of pre-owned and pre-loved clothing. Quite a lot of it is designer labels, main brands, and most of it hasn't been used very much. All the proceeds from the sale of these go to support the animals, feed the animals, and shelter them. Now, this is going on Sunday the 6th, as I say, from 11 until 1, so 11 in the morning until 1 in the afternoon, and it takes place at the commercial centre Montaña Tropical, which is in the old town of Puerto del Carmen. And it's quite a good venue to have a thing like that, because not only can you enjoy that, but there are a few good restaurants in that little centre and a couple of decent bars as well. So you could perhaps go and enjoy the spring sale and also go and have a bite to eat. And finally, next Friday the 11th, how about a saxophone quartet concert, free of charge? Now, I've never met anyone who doesn't love the sound of the saxophone, but I can imagine the sound of 4 of them is going to be absolutely fantastic. And this one takes place at the Centro Social Cultural Francisco Javier, and that's in Calle Carlos V in Arrecife. Now, I know people say to me, well, we can't keep up with that when you're giving an address. Just go to Lanzarote information, click the What's On button, and then you can scroll through day by day to see what's on. And every single event that I talk about on these videos is in there. And there is a link to a map which will show you exactly where it is and how to get there. Now, this event, the Saxophone Quartet, takes place next Friday the 11th at 7 p.m. It's completely free to go in, and I've got a feeling it's going to be a really, really good night. So that's it for this week. Oh, the week's flying by. I just can't believe how quickly 2025 is disappearing in front of us or behind us. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, please give us a like. Don't forget to tell me what your 3 words are to describe Lanzarote in the comments below, but also leave any other comments, feedback, questions you've got. Julie and I read every single one of them, and we're always interested to hear what you've got to say and to get feedback from you and answer your questions for you. Thanks once again. Bye for now, everyone. Bye.